So much terrain that we could travel here. I think I'm going to break a little bit from convention and just kind of go with the flow, if you don't mind. So the films were The Body is a Shell and Don't Look Away. Is there anything you want to say to each other?
Everybody had a phenomenal film.
Oh, microphone, please.
Yeah, because I need that. Everybody had such phenomenal films. Each one I turned to Joseph and I'm like, I want to see that again. I want to see that again. Like, amazing, amazing films.
Yeah, I loved your film as well. It's always wild to me that the disability community is so vast and there's so many different disabilities, but certain things feel like I could have said it. So I just love connecting with those types of things.
Yeah, just to echo what Corey said, I want to go back and watch a lot of the films. And then it's just, it's great to have all various films talk about various aspects of the community, the disability community. And not just like, yeah.
And one of the things, I'd seen all these films. We screened them for the selection committee, but it's always a very different thing when you screen them together, right? Because you start to see patterns or threads or concepts or ideas that they might have in common. And one of the things that really struck me, particularly about your films, was there's a sense of individuality. The last film, I think, is flavoring this a little bit, autonomy, and also just how that connects to larger themes, right? I sort of implied a little bit at the beginning, the title of this package, if you will, is Reflections, right? And a reflection, yes, could be something you see in a mirror, but it's also, like we saw in one of the animated films, something that happens when you stop and you ponder and you look back, right? And you remember, or you just kind of take some time to be with a thought, an idea, or an emotion. And I'm wondering, first off, let's get into the sort of the basic questions, and then I can go a little deeper. I'll start with you fellas there in the end. Largely autobiographical, but not everyone chooses to put their life out there in a film. What was the catalyst for turning the story, the experience, into a film?
So I was I started this project in 2017, or late 2017. I was coming to terms with my own facial difference, and so I sought out organizations to provide, for help. And along the way, I met Corey. But
and was there a context, a place in that journey?
I was, there was. And since I was a filmmaker, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should make a film about this. And it was a very cathartic process in making this film.
And cathartic in what way? Explain that.
Coming to terms with my own facial difference, and then learning about. So this actually, Corey's story is part of a larger documentary I'm working on. This film is actually a proof of concept film. I've actually followed.
And for those people, and for those folks who might not know, explain what a proof of concept is.
Proof of concept is like it's like something that you wanna show to other people and say this is hopefully this film works, this project works, and if you like it, maybe you could give me money for my feature film. We could talk later about that.
That's one of the best definitions I've ever heard. That's very
yes. And so it's what's the name idea? Why I made this film? So along the way, I made this film as a way to express and deal with my own issues. And so Corey's the main character of the proof of concept film, and he actually, him and the other characters are adults in the film, have really helped me understand and my own journey. They have actually helped me in my own journey in accepting my own facial difference.
And Corey, what journey did that take you on?
So before he and I met, I had actually been trying to put myself out there, get my story told, because I felt like I was like, this life story there's a lot here. I'm like, I want to share it with the world. And I ended up writing a little article about living with a facial difference and having a hormone issue. And I ended up sending it to every facial difference community I could find. And I ended up reaching out to one who, she was like, I love this. And I was like, yeah, well, if you know anybody, send my name because I would love to get myself out there. She's like, well, I don't usually hear about that, but I'll let you know. He ends up talking to her, and within about a week, she's like, Corey, you're not going to believe this. I found someone. And literally he and I talked. And from the very get-go, we clicked. And every time something would happen, Joseph, do you want to film this? Hey, this is happening. You want to come? Like anything. So we bonded and we had that camaraderie that I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, a filmmaker and their subject it's always good to have that rapport. And we had it from the get-go.
That's fantastic. And what was the time frame from where the idea emerged and then you filmed and from what we saw here?
End of 2017 until last year. Actually, I filmed one of his surgery last year, and so I may or may not use it for the feature film. So about what 7 years, 8 years?
7 years.
Yeah.
8 years.
So
Yeah.
and I've been following 3 other adults as long as Corey.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
I just lucked out because I was closer to him. So it was a lot easier for us to get together.
yeah, that's true. The 3 other adults. 2 of them live in Canada, and 1 of them live in Rochester.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
very much. And Ashley, so we've traveled in similar circles for a while now, and I'm familiar with your work. Most of it, what I'd seen thus far had been more sort of straightforward narrative, right? You set up a situation, there's something that happens, there's a resolution of that. This film is very, very different, right? I would view it almost as a cinematic soliloquy of sorts and poetry. And I'm curious to know why why this film now? And let me ask that first, and I'll do a follow-up.
Yeah, I ended up getting this opportunity to collaborate with the DP. We were friends when we were both coming
And
up.
explain DP.
Oh, director of photography, so the guy who filmed it. We both kind of came up through assisting in the industry, and he's now doing features, and we were going through strikes. And he was like, hey, do you just want to make something creative? More kind of like a fashion spec to be able to do like commercials. And I ended up being like, let me think about this. And I've always just wanted to do more of like a lyrical poetry piece. And I wrote this poem that was kind of just within me. And I was like, you know what? This is what I want to make. And my husband's here who edited it. And he usually is the first person who sees any of my decks or things to make. And I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to send it to him. I'm just going to make this thing with no notes. I've been through like the studio process and networks and a lot of notes from people in Hollywood. And I was like, I don't want any notes. I just want to make something that is like making art to make art. And that's what I did. And, I grew up, I have a rare bone disease called Maffucci syndrome. And I grew up really ashamed of my body and not wanting to see myself in mirrors. Even like as a little kid, I would hide it or turn it the other way or, just having a lot of issues with it. And so this was kind of that love letter to my inner child and going to the other side of that and having radical acceptance of your body and realizing that as disabled people, we get to experience this really unique life and trying to trust that and trust the body that you're given. So.
Yeah, and well, you've got to live in it right?
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right? And so,
can I just add
yes, please.
One thing? You talked about not wanting to look in the mirror. Part of the film, our film is called Don't Look Away, and it's not only telling the audience or the viewers don't look away from us, but also I'm asking people with facial difference not to look away from themselves as well.
Yeah, and I think something that I realized, growing up, avoiding mirrors actually created its own complex and issue where when I'd see my body in like a photo or a video, I'd be like alarmed because I wasn't used to it. But the more that I expose myself to myself, it becomes a lot easier, and I think that's something that I want, younger people to know. And I'm so glad kids are growing up in a time where they have role models. Disabled people are all over social media. They're getting more in television and film. And, that's why we brought in little Zoe, and her grandma's here somewhere out there, right there. But, she has all these people to look up to now. So that's really special.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the beauties of making a film like this. I grew up in the Midwest in Indiana, and I was the only person with cerebral palsy that I knew, except for summer camp. When we went away to summer camp, then we all knew each other. But when I'd be walking around in my daily life, I've had that experience where I'd see my reflection in the window coming back, and I'd be, who is that? Oh, that's me. Right? And it was because I never saw anybody walking like the way I walk. So I didn't have the framing in my mind of like what that actually looked like. In terms of making films like these and putting them out into the world, what is it that you hope people take away from the experience?
Yeah, I think I hope they take away just to be more accepting of this body that they're given. And, it doesn't only speak to people with disabilities. I think we live in a culture where everyone is hyper fixated on looks maxing and trying to be perfect on social media. And I want people to just embrace the way that they were made and not always feel like we have to change ourselves completely for society. So
Fit into somebody else's little box. Yeah. Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, like, in times that, especially today, in these times, I feel like where world leaders are pushing against diversity and inclusion, I think it's a perfect time to double down of acceptance and accepting of differences. I hope. And also what Corey said in the film is that whenever you see someone that looks different from your perceived normal, don't look away. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, gonna filter myself. You almost triggered it. Gonna filter myself. But the thing about ours is like something that I hope it's multifaceted. Like where obviously there's don't look away. Accept people for who they are. But there's also other things like perseverance. Other things like you never know what your journey is going to look like. You just got to keep going. Like I'm hoping people watch it and they get stuff from it that I don't even pick up on. It's like that's my goal.
Yeah. I think we have room for a question or two from the audience. So anybody? Okay. Just Yara's making her way up.
If you've seen the social media for today, like, what is your best advice for anyone who is like facing like a disability with autism or anyone with like anything between their bodies? Like, what will you be in a what's your best advice for people with autism or people with body deportation when they face with media today, when they like see people like try to feel like diversity as freakish, even though it's not?
I think art in times like these is like a radical protest against kind of what's happening. And I think finding community and connecting with everyone is really a place to resist what's happening. And I think, I didn't feel connected to disability for 30 years of my life until I started meeting other people and accepting myself. And now it's this beautiful community that I have just thrived within. So I think like continuing to like connect with each other is something you can do today.
And maybe for some people, because of the work that you're doing, that can happen sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, I would just like to add, like, just don't be so harsh on yourself. Just have more self-compassion.
And
yeah.
This is just kind of like a general advice, but advocate for yourself. If something seems off, don't be afraid to speak up. because as people who are like disabled or different in different ways, we sometimes, if someone says, we're doing something wrong or criticizes or whatever, we just kind of put our head down and accept it, or we just kind of ignore it. But don't be afraid to always advocate for yourself, because no one's going to do it better than you.
Sean, you have the last word.
Hi. Well, first of all, my God, I was so moved by this. So my background is I have cerebral palsy. I grew up believing my disability was the blessing of my life, but a lot of that came with layers of denial as well, because I think when I was growing up before social media, the idea was whoever was different had to be scrappy and adapt. Right? And so I kind of went through childhood thinking, oh, I'm just like everyone else. I just have these sticks too. We can't see the sticks right now, but they're back there. But I remember having a moment. You triggered a memory, Ashley. Having a moment when I was 9 years old, walking through my lobby, which had a floor-to-ceiling mirror that was there every day, and I had never seen that my left knee goes in when I walk. And I was like, oh, how come I'm 9 years old. How come I never noticed this? And so it was like kind of the first time that I saw myself, maybe how other people saw me. But anyway, I didn't mean to get us on a tangent here, but to say that one of the things that I think is so powerful about both your films is that it's really, I think, first of all, the poetry in your piece, Ashley, I mean, what I thought about is, I also gained 25 pounds during the pandemic and also on the wrong medication at one point. And I realized I had to love my body because it was mine, not because it was perfect. And I think, anyway, I love that you're together here, because I think just by sharing your stories, and what I loved about your film, Ashley, is also that it was a collective. There were many women of all ages that you were celebrating. This is a poem that you wrote for yourself, but it was really for everyone that's ever felt different, and all women. So thank you for that. But also, Corey, I think that so many people are going to be charmed by you. I hope your film gets to go everywhere, and I think your DMs are going to fill up too.
I'm hoping.
But cheers to being vulnerable. And I think just having examples like you that we didn't have growing up is so important. Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing your films with us and for the Q&A. If you like what you've seen, please stick around for the rest of the festival. Watch the films that you can online. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your enemies. We don't care. Just get people here. Thank you very much. We're ReelAbilities. We're reframing disability. That means changing the stories that are told and who gets to tell them. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.